The European powers were gravely weakened by the war, financially and politically. After the World War I, the situation was made worse by the political complication caused by the Treaty of Versailles. Devaluation led to a worldwide credit contraction. In England, the Labour Party was defeated in the general elections of 1931. The first nation of Western Europe to turn against the ruling regime was Italy. The fascist party was founded in the year 1919. Between 1871 and 1914, Germany had risen to dizzy heights of economic, political, and cultural accomplishments. Ho Chi Minh was inspired by Mao Zedong. Haiti became the first Caribbean country to throw off slavery and French colonial control. At the dawn of the 20th century, the United States had occupied Cuba and Puerto Rico. Theodore Roosevelt was the American president in 1904. The monarch of Brazil fell in 1889. The first huge stock market crash occurred in 1929. After the breakdown of system of exchange, the Bank of England found itself in bankruptcy. The first of the nations of Western Europe to turn against the world ruling regime was Italy. In the 1924 elections, 65% of the votes were cast for the fascists in Italy. The reparations and other clauses in the Treaty of Versailles caused acute discontent and hardship. The mainstream political party in Indochina was the Vietnam Nationalist Party. The decolonization process started in India with the launch of the Swadeshi movement in 1905. The call given by the Congress for a civil disobedience movement evoked tremendous response in rural India. In the 1937 elections, the Congress won a resounding victory in most of the provinces. The Union of South Africa came into being in May 1910. At the end of the World War I, America was financially in a sound position. The stock market crash in the US was followed by the failure of American banks. Devaluation forced creditors to stop lending. In the USA, the Republican Party was rejected by the people in successive elections for about 20 years after the Depression. Mussolini was the son of a blacksmith. Mussolini assumed the title of Deus, meaning the leader. In 1935, Mussolini invaded Ethiopia. The Social Democratic Party was outlawed soon after the Nazis came to power. The Boers hated the people whom they referred to as Uitlanders. The South Africa Act passed by the British Parliament in 1909 provinced for a union parliament at Cape Town. In 1930s, the emergence of the Indian National Congress was seen as a militant mass movement in India. In 1924, elections were won by the National Party with the support of the labor movement in South Africa. In spite of misunderstandings and disagreements, Smuts-Herzog alliance lasted until 1939 in South Africa. Around the 11th century, large cities formed into a League of Mayappan of Native Americans. Verwoerd, who was the Prime Minister of South Africa from 1958 to 1966, was the brain behind the apartheid policy. A Spaniard named Francisco Pizarro led the conquest of the Incan Empire. The American and French revolutions provided inspiration to the Latin Americans. The Napoleonic invasion of Spain and Portugal in 1808 quickened the process of liberation struggle in South America. Simon Bolivar was also called El Liberator. Pedro I, renouncing the claim to the Portuguese throne, declared the independence of Brazil. From 1898 to 1902, Cuba was under US military rule. Latin America disliked dollar imperialism. In 1821, Central America seceded from Mexico. The Monroe Doctrine had barred European interference in the affairs of the American continent. The withdrawal of American capital was aggravated by the US market crash in 1929. England decided to leave the gold standard as the situation did not improve after the stock market crash. Matteotti was the socialist leader who questioned the fairness of elections in Italy. Between 1871 and 1914, Germany had risen to dizzy heights of economic, political and cultural accomplishments. The National Socialist German Workers' Party was abbreviated as Nazi Party. The Nazi state of Hitler, known as Third Reich, brought an end to the parliamentary democracy. Hitler replaced the flag of the Weimar Republic by the swastika banners of National Socialism. The Gestapo was formed and run by Himmler. The Nazi termed the killing of 6 million Jews in Europe as the final solution. Himmler's second in command was Heydrich, who was responsible for the concentration camps. Hitler's deliberate attempts to breach the Treaty of Versailles led to the outbreak of Second World War. Social Democratic Party was founded on 23 May 1863 in Leipzig. The mainstream political party in Indochina was the Vietnam Nationalist Party. The peasant revolt in Indochina was crushed by White Terror. The pamphlet French Colonialism made Ho Chi Minh well known as a Vietnam nationalist. The Great Depression of 1929 had a disastrous impact on British trade and business. Britain's need for gold in the crisis years was met from the export of gold from India. The language of the Boers was Afrikaans. The ban on African National Congress was lifted in 1990. Nelson Mandela was the first black president of South Africa. Even though apartheid was dismantled, the whites completely dominate the economic sphere. Social Democratic Party, Leipzig. Tenochtitlan, Mexico. The final solution, killing of Jews. Fall of Hitler, 1945. Von Hindenburg, German president. Toussaint Louverture, 1791 to 1804. Simon Bolivar, the Liberator. Central America, Mexico. Uruguay, Brazil. Venezuela and Ecuador, Grand Colombia. Vietnam Nationalist Party, 1927. Diarchy in India, 1919. Ottawa Economic Summit, 1932. Government of India Act, 1935. The Imperial Conference, 1926.